Welcome back to Film in Minnesota. I'm Alan Tracy.
And I'm Rahana Power.
And today we have Nickolaus Swedlund with us. Hello, Nick. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely.
Saw your film Sanctified, and we're excited to get to talking to you about that here.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But before we do, gotta split off to our standard, first getting to know you a bit here. So Nick, can you tell us something fun, interesting, unique about yourself, maybe a skill or interesting adventure or something that, maybe everybody knows about, maybe nobody knows. And for some reason right now is the time you're wanting to just tell the world.
Yeah, let me think for a minute. I think I'm trying to think of what's interesting. Like what's the right story to tell? I can't think of any tricks that would translate well in an audio, format. But it's not funny, but it's an interesting insight into who I am. That's okay. So I grew up with a severe speech impediment, and have since basically grown out of it. But that and we can go into this further later. But that is the capital T reason, or a capital R reason, why I'm a filmmaker today.
Really?
Yeah, it's because of that childhood. So it's not funny. It's not happy and exciting, but it is interesting. I think because of that childhood trauma, basically, for lack of a better term, that's what propelled me into this field. So
wow, yeah, that's very interesting. How did that? At what point did you decide, or maybe what caused you to take that experience and that trauma, like you said, and translate it to this is definitely what I want to do and how I want to apply myself?
Well, originally in about 6th grade, 7th grade, I was homeschooled K through 12 also, kind of partly, well, for a whole bunch of other reasons. So it doesn't matter. Sorry. But I picked up a camera and I just made, silly videos with my older brother and my friends. But I realized when people would watch them that they were reacting to my ideas, right? Which previous to that point, I couldn't really get my ideas out and have a normal conversation. It was always a bit removed. So I think once I realized that as a 7th grader, it was this is a way for me to communicate with people and express things. And that was a pretty early on realization. So, and then it became a get rich quick scheme, which has not panned out.
It's really close. That's the next step. Yeah.
Sure.
Make $1 million, just like they said. No.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome though. So when I know we're going to get into Sanctified specifically, but what time frame would you say did you really jump into this as your profession, where you said your first film, and whether it's writing, directing, anything? So
I knew in junior high, and then in high school I was looking at colleges, and I ended up going to Biola in Los Angeles for my undergrad, because I wanted a school that had a film program, and that school at the time fit with my family's lifestyle values and faith tradition. And so I chose that school. This is back in 2001 to 2005. And that was the beginning of my LA, kind of formal Los Angeles, film training, I guess, still undergrad. And then I worked on a couple reality TV shows as a PA after college. And it was actually on one of those shows that a gaffer on America's Next Top Model, actually, he asked me what I want to do, and I very, very sheepishly said, I think I want to write and direct. And he said, well, you got to go to AFI, NYU, or USC, otherwise it's not going to happen. And then, that's just his opinion, but that opinion, it's stuck hard.
Oh,
Yeah.
And so I was in LA and I applied to AFI only and got put on the waiting list, which I thought was pretty cool. And all right, well, that's a good win.
right.
But then a month before classes began in 2006, they called me and said someone that, didn't come. So you want in? And then that turning point, the acceptance into AFI and to going there for 2 years and that MFA program that laid the foundation for everything. I mean, like it built, I often said at the time, I learned more in a day about filmmaking at AFI than I did all 4 years of my undergrad. And that's not to knock the undergrad school. It's just the difference.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting because I'm learning that there's kind of like this Ivy League of film school, if you will.
Yeah.
USC, NYU, and AFI, and I think there's another one, but
in the US, those are the top three, yes. And then actually there's one in Italy that's really good, and then the Beijing International Film School, I think it's called that, is actually very top world regarded. There's other, and then there's like like the next tier down is still incredible schools. But yeah, AFI is often one or two of the top. So
yeah.
Depending on the year, AFI and USC kind of switch places every other year.
Yeah. Wow, that's interesting. So you actually got into AFI, and then
just exciting.
It was incredible. It was the MFA directing program, and got to make three short films the first year, and then one thesis film the second year, and we shot the thesis film actually on 35 millimeter, which was kind of like the last time that really that was 2008. So it was already then kind of going out of, well, not style, but like it was financially not feasible.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and the way video rose in HD at the time, and then just it was more feasible, right? So
yeah, it's less expensive.
Yeah, I never thought it would. Like when I started film school, it was kind of like I think film will be around forever, and then.
I think there will always be Christopher Nolan, and there will always be those type of filmmakers that have the power to demand it and will get it, and that's great. I'm glad it exists. It should exist. It should continue. But I'm kind of whatever the right medium is for the project that you're doing, that's the right thing to shoot on. It doesn't have to be one or the other for any other reason than the story, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah. But he's like always shooting in IMAX, and it's always kind of like, how'd you get an IMAX camera in there? It's like some of these shots, it's just like, huh.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. So we kind of got the beginnings. I feel like I want to jump forward into Sanctified. I just, first off, what made you decide to take on Sanctified? It's a Western. Is that something you've always wanted, or is that a bucket list item? I don't know.
That's a good question. I think well, I've always liked Westerns. I think people have argued this point with me, or the other. Sorry, people have argued the other side of this idea, but I kind of consider Westerns to be like the American, like Westerns are to America what Shakespeare is to England. I'm not comparing Westerns to Shakespeare, like in their, but the point being that it is very historically an American art form within filmmaking, right? Or not art form, a genre in America, right. And so that that's very interesting to me, and I like that very much. How I got pulled into Sanctified was, so it wasn't originally my idea. The producer and the star, Dan Belinsky, it was his original script called Wes and Hildy, that he wrote in 2018. And then through my business partner, Matt Roy, who I think you guys have talked to, they worked on a short film called The Badlands Girl, I think just before Dan wrote this script. anyway,
Oh,
so through Matt, that this script got into my hands, and I just kind of I wrote up this long email and saying, I think this is great. I think it has a really solid foundation of like an outlaw and a nun in the Badlands. I think that's an interesting idea. I think there's a lot there to play with faith and doubt and religion, and the Western, and the scope of the Western allows for those conversations to take place kind of on the forefront, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so I pitched kind of, this is what I would do with the story beat by beat in this email, and Dan said, "Great, go for it." And so I wrote I wrote my first draft, and that kind of, well, at the time I wasn't on to direct yet, but that first draft I think convinced Dan, along with a film I had just made called All the Time in the World, that those two things kind of convinced him to go, you know what, okay, you're the director. So and then here we are.
great.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I think, okay, so you decide to take on a Western.
Yep.
You live in Minnesota, right, at this time, I assume? Okay. How did you land on North Dakota? Was that always the plan, or what was it to that?
Yes, that was always the plan. Dan Blinsky's, his company, Canticle Productions, is the primary, a company on this project, and his, and I don't want to speak for him, but this is just my understanding of his company. His company is set out to increase filmmaking in North Dakota specifically, and tell North Dakotan stories. And so he that's his kind of charter for his company, if that makes sense. So there wasn't really any other option to like, oh, it should be in Arizona or something. And actually, I really liked that. I liked the creativity from constraints, right? Where there's never been a Western. Well, there haven't been many Westerns done in North Dakota or in the Dakotas, period, compared to Texas and the Southwest.
Mm-hmm.
So that chance to kind of not remake the Western, but to tell what's called like a Northwestern or a Northern Western.
Northern West. Yeah, I think the only other one that comes to mind would be Dances with Wolves. So
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And there's other indie ones out there that do like, Montana and stuff. But then you start getting into like the Western as like a mountain movie, which is a different kind of a subgenre of Westerns.
Oh yeah.
So anyway, and North Dakota is beautiful, and especially the far western edge and the Badlands, and it's it's cold and it snows like crazy, and then but there's also cacti, so it's just an interesting place.
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
So can you speak a little bit to the casting process? Like, how did you approach that, and how did you end up with the cast that you had for it?
The casting process, yeah. We did kind of a traditional. So we started casting before COVID, and we tried, because we tried twice to get the film made, and the third try we did it. So before COVID, we did a traditional casting method where we held auditions and talked to agents and managers, and actually Bill Cooper of the Twin Cities Film Fest was an incredible help and very formative in this project.
Great.
He helped cast the film and is credited as casting director.
Awesome.
He's amazing. So he came on board for that and kind of oversaw that, and he brought us Tiffany, he brought us Carl and Chelsea, and and having Dan already in the main role was helpful, because in the auditions they got to play off of him. So, and we did 3 or 4 sessions, and then the money didn't quite come through, and so we pushed a year, and then the next year was spring 2020, and we weren't making a film then.
Yeah. So yeah, talk about that, production constraints of the pandemic. So how long did it take to shoot? How did you shoot it, and what made it, the where it got to today? So
sorry. Yeah, the production constraints and whatnot. I think we shot for 18 days, I believe. I think we were there for about
Oh,
25 total.
okay.
We stayed at filmmaking it's a combination of art and problem solving and logistics and business and so logistically speaking, we have all these different locations that are all outside, and we
Mm,
wanted to have a home base that is ideally centrally located, right?
right.
So we stayed and slept and ate and everything and lived at the Badlands Ministries Bible Camp, just about 10 minutes south of Medora, North
Oh,
Dakota. Um, and so we were just like in camp for a month, basically, like film camp. It was so it was so unifying, because we were there having fun and we would, hang out in the evenings um, and then all the locations kind of using that camp as a center point. All the locations, whether or not we picked a spot was dependent on how close it was to that camp, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And everything that we shot, except for the church at the end, everything was no more than 20 minutes away. And most of it was actually on the campgrounds itself, or like maybe 5-10 minutes just outside.
even better.
Yeah, no, it was, because and I joked a bit with the producers and whatnot, like, you can, if you need like a canyon, right, or a butte or a cliff, like it makes no sense in my mind to pick one that's, an hour and a half away when there's a perfectly good one right over there. Like let's make that one work, because that one we can go back to the camp for lunch, and it makes the working on a film better
Right.
and smoother, I guess.
Looking back at COVID, because the initial lockdown was obviously just a giant roadblock and pause on the project.
Yeah.
When you guys did go into filming, though, eventually, were there still some maybe mini roadblocks that you had to kind of overcome, and how did you maybe like go about that, or were you since you were all sort of isolated, was that pretty helpful for you?
Yeah, we were essentially in as far as COVID roadblocks, we were isolated. We were in a bubble. We were off season
Mm,
also. So Medora, that was pretty much empty.
Mm-hmm.
hmm
And we had limited people who would go into the larger town for supplies and stuff. And no one got sick, which was awesome. And we did mask indoors at the time. And again, but the entire film is shot outside. So
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure the
Yeah,
CDC regulations at the time said you don't have to wear a mask outside.
Yeah.
right.
Or ever. I don't whatever. I don't know. It's hard to keep up.
Yeah.
But that was the biggest roadblock, or that was the roadblock for COVID. I mean, there were other roadblocks that were not like the weather and the land and the cattle.
Oh, did you run into an issue with that?
Yeah, we're shooting on a rancher's property, so he's got
Yeah.
a couple hundred head of cattle, and every now and then it's like, oh, we see some cows way in the back of the shot, so a PA would take off running and go scare the cows away. It was pretty awesome. But he was like 22 years old, so he just would, and he was like an athlete, so he just like took off and ran for hours all day long. It was awesome.
That's amazing. So thinking about that outside of cattle, what how did you guys approach maybe like the firearm training, horse training for the cast too?
For the cast, yeah. So the firearm training and the riding training, we had, I think, 1 day of each, like on site.
Whoa.
Yeah, not a whole lot, but and this is, just to be clear, this was filmed before the Rust tragedy, right? So that had not yet been a thing. And so, but we were still safe, and we had this awesome armorer named Ray Heiser. He's out of Wyoming. He was worked on like 310 to Yuma and
Oh,
the Ballad of Lefty Brown on Netflix, and he's a pro. So he supplied all the firearms and managed them. And he's an old pro. He's awesome. And so I never felt like we were in danger from that. The horses, on the other hand, were interesting because they're 1,000-pound animals, and they're animals, and they do what they want sometimes. And they're not.
Yep.
They were not film horses. They were not film trained. They were just ranch horses. But we had some awesome wranglers who were the ranchers and his buddies basically. And they no one got hurt, and it was awesome. And we had to be flexible with I would say if the horses could land generally over here, that'd be great.
Yeah.
And knowing that they probably can't land on a specific mark.
Yeah.
Because the horse is like, what are you doing? What am I'm just here.
Yeah.
They don't know what this. Yeah. So that was a challenge, but I thought that would be a challenge, and so in the shot designing, whenever there were horses involved, it was like we're gonna kind of pull back and be a little farther back so that wherever the horse goes, we can kind of adjust the camera and make the shot work.
That makes sense.
Wow. Yeah. Talk about that, the camera and the animal first, then we'll get to the camera. How did you and Ben come up with those shots? I mean, how do you Ben, the cinematographer, Ben Enke? Talk about that.
Yep. So my process, some writers or some directors and cinematographers will be more some directors are more hands off in that way, and they'll focus more on the actors. And I think I'm a bit of both. So I think it's the director's job to come up with at least the first draft of the shot list, and then you collaborate with your DP after that, and you discuss each scene, and what it could be, what it should be, and talk about the different lenses and all these different options. But then you as a director and a producer, you hire someone who you can also get along with, right? Because that's an important factor in working together in close quarters and making art, hopefully. And Ben is amazing. He's super chill, and he's the exact temperament that I need on set. Very very professional and relaxed, and I think that's important to me, and I like that a lot. And an incredible eye. I mean, his images are they're stunning. So as far as the specific shots, I drew a lot of storyboards, and then he would come in, he would suggest things that oh, that's great, that's a great idea, and so we would adjust in that direction. But yeah, that's kind of in a nutshell what how Ben and I work together. And again, I met him through Matt Roy.
Oh,
Matt knows everybody.
Yeah, and then there's Matt.
Yeah, that's accurate.
Yeah.
So, camera-wise, talk about the camera you chose, the lenses a little bit. How did that play for filming entirely outdoors?
Right.
And the elements and whatever you encountered.
So we shot on there's Canticle Productions, and then DNN Cinematics, and then my company Headwaters Entertainment, with the three companies on the project. So DNN Cinematics is owned by Carson Norgard and Dave Dybel. I think I got those names right.
Oh, I'm just
sorry. I've had a long work day today, so I'm fried. So sorry, guys, if I got your name wrong. But they own a company in Bismarck, or that company, and they provided the camera, which is an Arri Alexa LF Mini or Mini LF. I'm not a cinematographer, so I mix those things up sometimes. But early on, we had a discussion with Dan about shooting anamorphic versus on spherical lenses, and anamorphic it's a traditional choice for westerns, and it's kind of like a classic choice in my opinion. So we pushed hard for that because it creates that that kind of the wider.
Yep.
It lends itself to the landscapes, I guess. But then in that we were limited in the number of lenses that we had. So we only had 3 lenses. So some films they'll have 30, or a whole bunch.
Oh.
But we had a 40 mil, a 60 mil, and a 100 millimeter.
Really?
Yes. Which at first I was worried about, and they were the Apollo lenses from Cinemechanics.
Okay.
And
Whoa.
at first I was worried about only having 3 lenses because I thought it would be very, very limiting. But in hindsight, the creativity from constraints, like Ben and I on set, we just, began to develop this language with the lenses and it kind of hide and how they portray space and people. And we would say, this feels like a 40, or this feels like a 60, this feels like 100. And so we developed back to like how the shots were created. Because we only had 3 lenses, we had 3 different looks kind of to choose from. So, sorry. And that was really liberating in hindsight. Like I really liked having only 3 because it wasn't like, oh, should we do the 24 or the 21 or the 35 or the 50 or the 85 or the, no, it was just 3. It was 3. So the simplicity was just, it was nice. Yeah.
Awesome. So I'm less technical. I don't know a lot of those details, so I'm gonna hop to a non-technical piece. Can you talk to us a little bit about stunts with Tom?
Yeah, Tom Ringberg, our stunt coordinator, he's awesome. Super incredible to watch him work, and we could not have done this done this without anyone who was there. I mean, you actually need a whole team, and that's why I love that part of filmmaking. I think anyone who's in a position of power on set and forgets that is just missing the whole point.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, soapbox ended. I'm sure I'll get back up on that box later. But Tom, no, he was awesome. He brought in so many skills, and everyone felt so much safer. I felt, freed up to talk to the actors about the performance, knowing that Tom was not just coordinating the action, but kind of directing it in like he and I together, right?
Mm-hmm.
And giving him, you're trusting him and that he knows what he's doing. So I'm not going to try and tell him how to do his job. It's my job to take his knowledge and fit it into the film, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So he, like for the shootouts, every shot has a number. So it's like every time a gun fires, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Like so, like it's all counted out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so during the rehearsals for the shootouts, we would just have everyone just with their hands as guns. Like there's no firearms yet.
Right.
And they would yell bang as he would call out the number to get the pacing down.
Okay.
To choreograph the firing.
Yeah.
And because that was figured out kind of ahead of time, that allowed Ben and I to watch it a number of times and we had a shot list, but it was watching those rehearsals kind of in real time that helped us to like, okay, we should do this and this with the camera. We're gonna divide up the fight between these different sections and kind of tackle each one at one section at a time.
Mm-hmm. Was there a stunt that you were maybe most excited about with the film?
Yes. Most exciting stunt.
You can't give it away, I don't think.
That's a good point. Or maybe one without a lot of detail, maybe even one that you were maybe most like understanding that Tom is excellent at his job and was definitely there and doing it, but maybe you were just more like on edge about like, okay, this is the one, like, so we can get through this. We're good.
Yeah. The one stunt that it's not a gun stunt, but the one stunt that was probably the most nerve-wracking in some way or just concerning was there's a scene, and this doesn't spoil anything, but there's a scene, it kind of does, but it's fine. It's fine. A scene where Wes goes into the river in the film. And so just from that's a stunt because you have an actor underwater. And the water, we shot this in May 21. So the water was, basically fresh, melted snow.
Yeah.
So the temperature was about like 41 degrees or somewhere in that range. And when we, were kind of prepping to film that day, Tom asked Dan, he said, so have you ever done a polar plunge? Because that's basically, you're going to have about 8 minutes before we have to get you inside. Yeah. So that was so it was the combination of the timing and the stunt and the temperature. If it was warmer, you could do it, 5 times. That's fine.
Yeah.
Because of the temperature, it was like we can do this once, maybe twice.
Mhm.
So
Wow.
Oof.
yeah.
Yeah, you kind of added two of the three don'ts, like animals, water, and like working with children are kind of the most difficult,
Yep.
things you can do.
Yep.
So that's very interesting.
Yeah.
Also very impressive.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So you pulled it off.
We
And-
did. We did. We pulled it off, and we got through the shoot, and we got through editing and the score, and it's done, which is pretty
Yes.
exciting.
Talk about editing and then score we'll get to, but how long okay, so you filmed in May, was it?
Yeah, May 2021.
Okay.
And then we had two editors on the project. Emmy Holm, Emmy. I know her as Emmy and Jay, and they have different skill sets, and they're both awesome. And Emmy, really teed up and laid a fantastic foundation for us to dive in. And then Jay and I, starting just this past, like probably in May or June of this past year, we got to sit down together. Jay Ness is his name, and got to sit down together in his studio and just really dive into the story, and the footage, and we cut it down from about 2 hours and 10 minutes to the 90 that it is now, nice and tight, and has a good pace. That's always a fun and nerve-wracking time to watch the footage, because you can't be like, oh, we should get a shot over here, but no, you didn't film that shot, so you can't do it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Was there anything that had to get cut that was maybe a little hard to let go of?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I mean, always, but
no, there always is, because the script that I wrote, and the first cut was 2.5 hours long, which when I first saw that, I was ear to ear gritting. I was like, oh, great, good, done. Let's get it out there.
Yeah, let's go.
It was the assembly. It was every scene that we shot, in order, and it's kind of a very raw form. But I was just so happy to finally see it that I was just kind of like, I wasn't thinking straight. But there's a couple scenes. There's a great scene with Wes and Shaw in the only interior inside Shaw's tent that got cut. That's a really cool scene. I like a lot. There's a couple scenes. There was a scene with Emmett, the brother, kind of walking through camp, and the other outlaws like spit at his feet, and it's funny. So other than. Yeah, those are kind of those are the two main scenes that got cut. Other than that, it was just trimming dialogue back, to the bare essentials, to what is absolutely necessary to get the scene, get the point across, and get on to the next scene. And to hit you're finding what the right pace is for that film, and different films have will call for different paces. I've told my students when I taught that there's a time, and usually in editing, in production too, where the filmmaker, you stop being the creator of the film, and you turn into a curator, right? Where the film takes on a life of its own. It gets a little artsy fartsy, but it's like it does take on a life of its own, and the film starts to speak and say, no, it needs to go this way. The film wants to go this way. And you just have to, I think you have to listen to that, or you have to have the budget to do what you want.
Yeah. Time or money, which do you want,
Exactly right.
But you definitely want it to be good. So talk about, so you get it down to 90, and then you get it to your composer.
Yes.
Who, by the way, has it on like every streaming music album everywhere, so take a listen. It is very impressive. Talk about that.
So Will Vandekramer is a composer in the Twin Cities, and he and I met a couple years ago, and he read a very first draft, and we stayed in touch during all the starts and stops with this project, and I had a good feeling about the guy, and so kept him on, and definitely wanted him to do it the whole time. And then he and I, we would talk every now and then, and I would share different ideas with him. And one of the ideas that I shared was, because this story is so Catholic centric,
Mm-hmm.
and therefore religiously focused, with the nun and her worldview, that I was like, I've never heard a Western. Westerns have very iconic music. The good, the bad, and the ugly, and all that. It's very iconic, right? You
Mm-hmm.
instantly hear it. And I didn't want to go that way with it. The stereotypical, the rattlesnake, and that kind of stuff. So I figured, like, what it'd be really cool if a church organ was the primary instrument in a Western, because you have this
Mm.
epic landscape,
Mm-hmm.
and then you have this massive instrument that is used to musically speak to God or whatever, right? So you have these two massive ideas, and I thought it would be a really cool pairing.
Mm-hmm.
And Will was a bit apprehensive at first, but I wore him down, and no, he was great. But I did have to. I kind of kept bringing it up, and I think it worked out. That was my only note. Really, was like my only idea going into it was it's gotta be a church organ as like the primary thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the rest
Yeah.
was his masterful, ability to create music. It was, yeah, it's incredible.
Right.
Wow. So at this point, you've got your film, you're ready to go. It's all bundled up and perfect to bring out into the world. You just had it at the Twin Cities Film Festival,
Mm-hmm.
which was very exciting. I would love to touch on that here in a second as well. But now that's over. So can you mention, what about distribution? Where can people see it now that that's over? Is it going to be at other festivals? Is it going to be released for streaming or anything?
It will be released streaming eventually, not right away. We are discussing other festivals as well. It is currently playing, though, in theaters in North Dakota and South Dakota and Montana.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
and this is part of Dan and Canticle Productions' kind of self theatrical distribution model, where he partners with a bunch of these movie theaters in North Dakota, and they make a deal, and it'll air, or not air, it'll screen for a while.
Mhm.
The world premiere in Bismarck was almost a month ago, I think now.
Mm. Mhm.
And I just got a notification or an email that it got extended for 2 more weeks because it's so popular in Bismarck.
Wow.
Oh,
So right now we're just going to kind of see where that theatrical run could kind of take us, and we're getting some not casual, getting some light interest from people who are saying, I want to see this, but I live in Atlanta, or
Mhm.
wherever, or Texas. Like, how can we see it? So I think we're going to start talking to individual theaters, in small towns across the country,
Mhm.
and that will hopefully build kind of a grassroots, viewership. And I know Dan and Canticle want to get it up on a streaming service. I think he's aiming for January-ish,
Mhm.
but you never know with that stuff. So
Yeah,
right.
absolutely. Can you touch on your experience with Sanctified at the Twin Cities Film Fest?
yeah, sure. It was my experience at the film fest. It was a little surreal. Um, because the film was nominated for Best Feature Film of the festival, alongside the new Sam Mendes film, and Sarah Polley, and Martin McDonagh, and others. It was just like these Academy Award winning writers and directors, and then me. So that was very, very humbling, and very honored to be in that
Yeah.
group. Very honored. It was amazing, and that's Bill and Jayton are and have been instrumental in my career. And so I definitely want to thank them for that kind of elevation of the project. They put it up in that group, and that's a big thing, and I don't take that for granted. So
Mhm.
um but then yeah, so being at the festival is awesome. The lounge and the my friends and family came to the film, and I've been talking about this thing for 3.5 years. So for everyone
Right.
that I know to finally come to the theater and watch it with me
Mm-hmm.
is very very satisfying.
Yes. Nick, when we first met, I think it was like a New Year's Eve or Christmas party or something of 2019 or something.
At Uptop
And
Films?
yes. And
Oh
you
yeah.
told me about this project and that you were going to film it in April or May or whatever.
Uh-huh.
And then,
And then
Yeah.
and then.
yes.
Right. Well, the average time for an indie film to get off the ground and get made, if it gets made, is 7 years. So,
Mm.
this is like a 3.5 year process. So that's, or 4 years. So we're
You're ahead of the curve.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
way ahead. Yeah.
You're
exactly.
tenacious, is what I'd
Exactly.
say. So you and
Exactly.
all the producers that were a part of this.
Yeah.
Yeah. How did you get so many producers on your list? I'm just looking at the list here on IMDb. So
Well, so yeah, so there was definitely a core group of producers who were on the ground in North Dakota, right? And
Mhm.
I would classify them as the core group, right? But we did do a Kickstarter campaign earlier
Okay.
on back in 2019, I believe, and kind of carried that through the pandemic as well. So, depending on I wasn't really involved with that Kickstarter, stuff. I was kind of in that, but there was one of the perks or whatever, depending on how much you donate is an executive producer credit.
Oh,
So,
okay. Great.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm glad it finally got made. People got to see it in the theater,
Mm-hmm.
which the way things have been going, it looks like everything went streaming and then kind of is starting to bend back towards theaters now. So
Yes, it's very, I don't know how to say this. It's well, whatever I said before, it's satisfying to sit in a theater and watch the film that you worked hard on, and all your, colleagues and collaborators worked so hard on, and have everyone, not just who is there as an audience member, but everyone who's there, who was on the cast and crew, express that it was the highlight of their career, or it was, the best set that they've ever worked on, and it was
wow.
a magical experience, someone has said, and so hearing that kind of interpersonal review of the process
yeah.
of getting Sanctified on the screen was it continues to be pretty amazing to hear that.
Yeah, that's no small thing. That's incredible.
So Nick, was Sanctified your first feature, or where does it fit kind of here?
It's technically my third, actually.
Okay.
So when I was teaching, so I moved back up. I went to AFI. Then I got married, had a kid, and we moved back here to Minneapolis 12 years ago, and so now we have 5 children. Because I wasn't gonna raise my kids in Los Angeles. That just was what it wasn't for me.
Yeah.
So anyway, I was teaching at a small college called Crown College out west of the cities, and I just was tired of watching my fellows from AFI go off and have these incredible careers, and I was feeling sorry for myself, and so I figured, well, I'm just gonna make a film. I'm gonna make a feature. I don't have any ideas for a short film. I'm gonna make a feature. I have a college campus. I had college students who like to act and who want to in their theater program, and I have a camera and I teach that here, and I have an editing software, and there's no excuse. So I designed a project around all the assets that I had, and it was called All the Time in the World. It was about a football player who gets injured in his last year. And now that he can't play football at college, he has to kind of decide, why am I here in the first place? This is why I came, and now I don't know what I'm doing after college. So it's a very, existential and, lugubrious film. But it was, it kind of Terrence Malick inspired, and I just had to make something.
Mm-hmm.
And I made that, and we shot for 9 months on and off on the weekends over the course of one school year. That got into the 2015 the 2015 Twin Cities Film Fest. And then that's because of that film. I wrote a script called Junk. Because of that script, I met Matt Roy, and then Matt Roy and I formed Headwaters Entertainment. And then during the pandemic, after Sanctified got pushed 1 year, Matt and I said, let's just go make a movie. And so again, we wrote a script and we shot Bow Brothers, my second feature, in October of 2020. So there was a slight COVID kind of released its foot off the gas a little bit. It was still in the middle of it, but we shot that for 10 days up in Grand Rapids, Minnesota, and so that was my second feature. And then right away that next spring I went and made Sanctified.
So how much are you just jonesing to make your next one?
Extremely a lot.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, very much so. And we almost did it this past summer, but the financing, as it does, sometimes doesn't fully materialize in time.
Right.
But next summer we're hoping to get the script Junk off the ground. It's a much bigger budget and kind of a bigger step up in the career and in the scope and the scale of filmmaking, and that's going to be under the banner of the studio where I actually am right now, up in Chisholm, up at the Iron Range.
Oh,
I'm at Lost 40 Studios up here, where I'm a co-founder, and we're in production on a different movie that I'm co-producing. So,
wow.
Nice.
But hopefully
you have a hot hand right now, sir. I must say, it's kind of like in basketball, right? Just
well, it's ours if we want it. We don't need to ask LA for permission, or New York or Atlanta. This is a career that we can create ourselves.
Good for you. Yeah, very inspirational.
All right, so Nick, two questions. First is, how can people support you or contact you if they want to work with you in any capacity?
Yeah, well, how they can support me, I mean, I guess directly would be to, when Sanctified's up on a streaming service, I mean, rent it, buy it on Blu-ray. That would be nice. But I think from a larger perspective, a larger point of view, like, to support me is to support, like, don't support me, support filmmakers in general in Minnesota, right? Because we need each other, and we need everyone to work together and not be in silos and not bicker and not fight. And, we have to work together. And I think we can, if we want to. We can do this the Minnesota way. It doesn't have to be the LA way. So that's a way to support me indirectly. But as far as getting in contact with me, I'm on Facebook and other social media channels, and probably the best way is to reach out through a mutual contact. I'm probably not going to give my cell phone and email out on on the podcast, but it's also it's kind of readily available if you dig hard enough for it. So you can go to lost40studios.com and there's a contact page there. Headwatersentertainment.com has I think it's headwaters-entertainment.com has a contact page as well. So
great.
Fantastic. All right, the big one. What do you want people to remember most about you? Whether it's after you work with them, after they see your films, any of that.
What do you want on your tombstone? No.
Oh my goodness.
That's the old pizza joke, the tombstone pizza.
Yeah, you're right.
Oh.
Pepperoni.
Yes. Yes.
Well, I won't. I'm not going to answer what do I want people to remember about me in a big sense, in a general, like, life sense, because that feels too pretentious. But from in the filmmaking world, but I have this theory, and what I want people, I have this crazy theory that if you treat people, a director and a producer and a cinematographer, those three roles are the seat of power on a film set. And I think that those seats are, and I'm not calling anyone out individually, but those seats are so often abused. And whether it's fear or ego or a combination of the two, I don't know. But I think that I want people to leave after working with me that, maybe I got upset and I yelled, maybe that happens, it does. And, but I will always do my best to apologize and own my mistakes. But I want people to have a fantastic working experience with me, and a positive one, because we're not saving lives. This is filmmaking. It should be fun. Even when it's hard, it should still be enjoyable. Mm-hmm. And I have this crazy idea that if you treat people well, they want to come back and work for you. Mm-hmm. And so, it's not totally a selfless, pursuit, but I think I try to be genuine. I would rather treat people nicely than badly. So yeah, that's a nice way to approach life, right? But that's the point. I want people to say, oh, he's making another film. I've heard that's really a great set to, his sets are really nice to be on.
Right.
And they're not, sometimes they just go and they just get, the horror stories are a dime a dozen. And I don't want to be in that group. I want mine to be, I want the best of the crew and the new people to equally want to work with me. And the way you do that is by setting an example as a position of power, or in a position of power, and being a leader, and the leadership skills of filmmaking, I think, are under taught. It's not all yelling at people. It's encouraging them to bring to the table their best and their skill sets, whether they are the DP or a PA. Doesn't matter. We need both of you, and you should both be treated with a professional respect. Anyway, that's like my I wrote this like 20 I'm not gonna list them all. I wrote this 20-point like code of ethics for Headwaters, and a couple of them are like creativity, create from constraints, the process, not the product, respect your crew, respect your cast, and it's just kind of that thing, and lift others up is the last one, right? Because we need new people. We need those PAs. The PA today is going to be your cinematographer in 10 years, right? So we need to encourage especially in Minnesota or in these smaller market, we have to encourage each other who are starting out. And we can't, you can't burn bridges, and you can't burn people out. That's not a good business. It's not a good business model. Anyway, I could go on for hours about that topic.
Well, I think you nailed it. It's fantastic. So, Nick, we really appreciate you taking the time to hang out with us and chat and talk Sanctified and learn a little bit more about you. It's been really great, and we'll have to have you on again. In the meantime, to all our listeners, thanks for listening. And this has been Film in Minnesota.
Thank you very much.